Hello. Welcome to another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady TrenettWilson, your lecturer and social historian. I want to wish you a very happy Black History Month. Before I get started, I also want to acknowledge that we've had two terrible aviation accidents over this last week here in the United States, one over Washington and one over Philadelphia. I do want to extend my deepest condolences to the families. I thought that's why it would be a great time to do this lecture on the first black woman to hold her pilot's license in the country, and she also held an international pilot's license. Her name is Bessie Coleman. So let's get into our lecture. Betsy was born in my home state of Texas on January 26, 1892, in a city called Atlanta. She was the 10th of the 13 children, and their family were sharecroppers. Now, Betsy's world was completely segregated, so she attended a segregated school. It is believed her father was, whose name was George, was half Cherokee or Choctaw Indian. So it's believed that she is partly Indian as well. And her mother, Susan, was African American. Now, because of the agricultural economy of the time, the entire family worked in the field. But when she was still young, Betsy and the family moved to a place called Waxahachie, Texas. Now, if you're from the Dallas area, you know exactly where Waxahachie is, and it was known for being a sundown town and a place that you could get a ticket really easily. So this is where they moved, and this is where she grew up. In 1901, however, the family changed forever. Her story is just so it's sad, it's inspiring, but it's just so sad as well because during that year, 1901, George decided to move to Oklahoma in search of oil. So here he leaves this woman with 13 children to go find oil. Well, at the age of 12, Bessie attended Mississippi Baptist Church School, and at 18, after graduating, she went on to Langston University in Oklahoma. So, despite him leaving, her mother was still able to get her over the finish line, and she graduated from high school. And as we see her story unfold, as Bessie's story unfolds, we see too that her mother put bravery into her, adventure into her, and allowed her to experience life. So kudos to her mother for picking up the pieces after the dad walked out. Now, she was only able to attend only one semester at Langston because she ran out of money. But in 1915, Bessie was over the South and she couldn't take it anymore, so she moved north to Chicago, Illinois, where she lived with her brother. So a couple of her brothers had already moved to the area. She took a job as a manicurist, and while she was sitting there doing people's nails, people who were returning from World War I and they were coming and get their nails done, and they would talk about being in the army, in the Air Force, flying planes, and this really interested her. So the founder of the Chicago Defender, Robert S. Abbott, took an interest in Bessie, and he encouraged her. If you really, really want to go to flight school, you can't do it here in the U.S. because everything is segregated. I would suggest you go overseas. And that's exactly what she with the help of J.C. Binga. He was the first black man to own a privately owned bank in Chicago. So he sponsored her education. You know, as we tell these stories as I do these lectures, we find out that many times the person was able to go to the next level because someone financed them. Someone gave them an opportunity through sponsorship to go to school or to travel or to learn a trade. So that's a great thank you, Mr. Binga. So after taking a French class for a little while. At 19, Betsy got on a plane and she traveled to Paris, France on November the 20th, 1920, in pursuit of gaining her pilot's wings. On June the 15th, 1921, Coleman became the first black woman to earn her pilot's license and an international aviation license. She stayed in France for just a little bit before returning to the U.S. in September 21 to great fanfare because they had heard of her and what she was doing. But she immediately found out the only way that she was going to make a sustainable living was to do air shows. And it was very risky, but she felt it was worth it because they made a lot of money doing it. So in February of 1922, she returned to Europe to sharpen her skills. She also got some training in the Netherlands and in Germany, where she received more advanced training. So she was really wonderful. And she flew under the name Queen Bess. She was very popular. She flew Army planes left over from the war. Her first air show was on September the 3rd, 1922, where Robert Abbott, here he comes again, that's the one who is the publisher of the Chicago Defender, sponsored the show. It was held at Curtis Field, Long Island, near New York City. It featured other black pilots as well and a black parachutist named Herbert Julian. Betsy was just adventurous. She demonstrated daredevil moves like 4-8 loops, and then she would dip real close near to the ground. And she was known to attempt some pretty dangerous, tricks. But she said that's the way you made the money, so that's why she had to do it. In 1922, after buying a plane from an LA Army depot, Betsy crashed shortly after takeoff. And this was her first kind of serious accident. And this wasn't even in the show. And even though she really wanted to keep going, she broke several bones. And the doctor told her she needed to take some time off. So she went to Orlando, Florida to live, and she opened up a beauty shop while living there. So Betsy did not let any grass grow under her feet. Now, on April the 30th, 1926, so she had began to do her flying again and began to do her air shows again. There, this time, however, in Florida because they had moved. Now, she was never married or anything like that or had no any children because she was still in her early 30s and her career was just getting started. But on April 30th, 1926, when Betsy was only 34 years old, she held a show in Jacksonville, Florida, where she flew a plane that she had recently purchased in Dallas. Now, the plane performed poorly all the way from the flight from Dallas to Florida, and her mechanic told her this plane is not good, Betsy. I don't think we should do this. The family begged her, Betsy, come on, this plane isn't good. But Betsy said, well, let's test it out. Let's try it out. I have to do a parachute jump tomorrow, so let's try this out. So they went up in the plane anyway, even though the plane had performed poorly. It was Betsy and her mechanic. So they took the plane up, and Betsy did not put on her seatbelt. Well, while they were up, she was leaning over, kind of, surveying the terrain, and evidently the mechanic or somebody left a tool in the side of the engine and it locked the engine up and the plane crashed and well, not even crashed, it began to descend. So they were about 3,000 feet up in the air. It began to descend and Betsy fell out. It said that she fell like around 2,000 feet to her death. Mm, 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 mm. Now, let me just say, I firmly believe that if she fell that far down, I think she probably had already passed before she even hit the ground. I really, my condolences go out to her family. Just so sad. Our first black woman who had her pilot's license. This is the way she met her demise. Many people came to her services. They loved Betsy. She was really popular across the world. In fact, Ida B. Wells was the person who did her eulogy, and over 10,000 people attended it. She was laid to rest in Chicago at Lincoln Cemetery. Now, Bessie has had many honors honoring her, like libraries and in Chicago, streets. My own daughter attended school in the Dallas area at a school called Betsy Coleman. And so they have memorial plaques and roads at O'Hare in Chicago, also at Oakland International Airport and at Germany's Frankfurt Airport. They all have streets named after Betsy Coleman. Not only there, but schools and scholarships also bears the name of Betsy Coleman. So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Our very first Black woman who had a pilot's license and had also an international pilot's license. Did you know that's how she met her demise? Wow. This I see Betsy Coleman name on so many things, but I did not know what a sacrifice she paid in order to bring entertainment to people, to be an adventurer, and to live a life that only she could have lived. You know, she was, I mean, 34 years old. She had been flying since a young woman. So congratulations on her career and many things that she did. I hope that you enjoyed today's lecture. I can't wait till we talk about our next person as we go into Black History Month. I'm going to try to do a post almost every single day so we can get 28 days of only great royal black and elite throughout Black History Month. So I thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. Thanks for watching.